Okay, so I wanted to share with you what I was reading this morning during my morning meditation. And it was coming from the book of Genesis, chapter 22. You know, the story that talks about how God tested Abraham's faith and asked him to take Isaac and up the mountain and sacrifice him as a burnt offering. Okay, so the Bible talks about, it doesn't mention how Abraham questioned God or anything. It says he woke up the next morning, took Isaac and two of his servants, and they just started the journey. And it says that along the way, he stops and he tells his servants, both servants, that to stay here. Him and Isaac will continue on, up the mountain, and then they will return. He says, we will return. Okay, so right then, it shows Abraham's faith in God, because he didn't question it. He knew that God had already promised him that he was going to make him a father of many nations, and it would be through Isaac. Now, so as you listen to this, over and over in sermons and so on, they always talk about that part. But the part they never really emphasize on is Isaac. So as they're going up, Isaac stopped and he asked his dad, and I'm going to read it exactly from where it says in the scripture. It says in verse 6, it says, so Abraham placed the wood for the burnt offering on Isaac's shoulders, while he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the two of them walked on together, Isaac turned to Abraham and said, Father. He said, yes, my son. We have the fire and we have the wood, the boy said, but where is the sheep for the burnt offering? So that tells you that Isaac was fully aware of what was going on. Not only that, he knew what supplies were needed for a sacrifice, to sacrifice a burnt offering. And he saw that they didn't have any of that. They didn't have, they had the wood and they had the fire, but they didn't have the sacrifice. And Abraham's reply was, God will provide a sheep for the burnt offering, my son. Okay, all right. He didn't question the father. He didn't say anything. They kept on the journey. When he got to the place, it says that when they arrived where God had told him to go, Abraham built an altar and arranged the wood on it. Then he tied his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on the top of the wood. And then Abraham picked up the knife to kill his son as the sacrifice. Now, again, Isaac is fully aware. He's obviously seen his dad sacrifice burnt offerings before. And then he is allowing his dad to lay him on the altar, So at this point, for him to know all of this, he had to know what was going to possibly happen next. So, and he allowed his dad to do it. It showed his level of trust in his father. And I also looked at it as, just us living today, like, how our children watch our walk with Christ. They watch it because he knew that when he asked his dad, where we have the wood, we have the fire, but we don't have the sacrifice. And then his father's response was, God will provide. He didn't question his dad's judgment. He believed because his dad believed. It doesn't say that Isaac had his own relationship with God, but based off of Abraham's relationship with God, that's all he pulled from that, So he trusts his father so much because he saw how much his father trusted in God, and it just really hit me, and the fact that it was so much of a surrender. It didn't say in scripture that Isaac fidgeted. It didn't say he put up a fight or anything. He just laid down his life, which reminds me of Jesus. Jesus knew what was going to happen, but he laid down his life for us. And in our lives today, it makes me think like, God may not be asking me or you to lay our children as a burnt offering, but he wants us to trust us. He's not actually asking us to lay them down physically, but he wants us to surrender our children. He may be asking you to surrender your marriage. He might be asking you to surrender that addiction. He might be asking you to surrender that job, or that dream that you once had that may not be in alignment with the will that he and purpose that he has for your life. All of those are things that he requires us to lay down for him and just trust him to be God. So I just wanted to share that with you this morning because it blessed me. All right. You all have a blessed day.